Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
For centuries, ancient cultures knew the secrets to longevity, vitality, and healing. Now, modern science is catching up. Ageless Blueprint is a podcast that will reveal the modern secrets of better health and a better life. Join Dr. Eldred Taylor here today and every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on W4HC Radio at W4HC.com. As together we discover the secrets to better health through science and spirituality. A better life with Ageless Blueprint starts now. Here's your host, Dr. Eldred Taylor.
Good morning and happy Wednesday to everyone. I am Dr. Taylor, the hormone doctor and the spiritual MD. And I want to welcome you here to the Ageless Blueprint, where we try to connect ageless wisdom with modern science. And we're really going to do that today because I'll tell you what I hear over and over again in my office and on social media is, why do my labs seem normal and I feel so out of balance, or I feel so unwell? And so today we're going to talk about what a great book that I read. I've actually read it a couple of times, and it's called The Myth of Normal. Is that when we say normal labs, I want you to really understand what normal means. It doesn't mean optimal. It doesn't mean you feel great. It doesn't mean that everything's perfect. It just means that you are normal in this particular society or population. It is only saying that you fit into this bell-shaped curve. I'm going to talk to you about that. And anybody who's taken statistics or anything in high school, they know about the bell-shaped curve. So that's what we're talking about, normal. So you have to think, if most of the people in a population are not well, then unwell becomes normal, because that's where the biggest group of people is they're in this state of wellness or health or sickness or whatever. So all of a sudden that becomes normal, and you get judged by that awkward sense of normal, that unnormal sense, or that unhealthy sense of normal. So we're going to talk about that because I was trained in that thought process. You have been conditioned to think like that if I'm like everyone else, then I'm normal. That's not true. If you're in a society that is sick and unhealthy and you're like everyone else, that means you're sick and unhealthy. And that's how these labs are created. This is how these normal ranges are created. So let's go to the slide so you can maybe understand this a little bit better, I hope. All right. So why do I feel terrible even when your labs are normal? Okay. Why do you feel terrible even when your labs are normal? Because normal in medicine and in modern life has stopped meaning healthy. Okay. Your body is trying to tell you something, but conventional testing keeps missing the signals. And there are these routine tests that we do, we're going to talk about, and they're routine because they're routine. And these routine tests, they have built up this normal range. And so if the routine tests aren't telling you what you need to know so you can take action, then we have to start looking at some unroutine tests, because the routine tests aren't telling you what you need to know. So we need to look at some unroutine tests. So we're going to get to that also. So let's go to the next slide. Now, I would recommend this book. It's a little bit technical, but it's a little bit not technical, because it's going to talk about things that you think are normal that really aren't normal. This is a great book. So in The Myth of Normal, what he talks about is sickness has become standard. And even in medicine, I talk about the standard of care. The standard of care in medicine is, what are most reasonable physicians doing in your area? So if most reasonable physicians are doing things that are not good for you, like if most reasonable physicians are recommending chemo and radiation for everyone, then that becomes the standard of care, whether it is the right thing for you or not. But doctors have to follow that standard of care. So it's the same way where sickness has become the standard, where people having diabetes or high blood pressure or PCOS, it has become the standard because so many people have these conditions. But that is not normal. That just means that you are a part of a population that has these issues. So dysfunction looks ordinary. So the Dr. Mate calls this the myth of normal, a world of dysregulated. The world is so dysregulated that dysfunction appears ordinary. And here's the problem. That is how I got trained. So conventional medicine compares you to an already unwell population, perpetuating the cycle. So most of the time in medical school and in residency, you were dealing with people who are in the hospital. So these people are sick enough to be in the hospital. And that's how we got trained. And so here's how you have to think. I used to go in my office every day and I would see the OB patients. And of course, in 9 months or so, they would have a baby. But then what would happen is that I would have these GYN patients and they would have fibroids. And so what do? Well, we have to wait until they're sick enough to go to the hospital for a hysterectomy, are sick enough or have enough pain to go to the hospital to have a laparoscopy. So we would see you over and over again in the office, one year after another one, until you were sick enough to have a problem that we knew how to treat, because we didn't do a whole lot of office work. We didn't take care of a lot of non-hospital patients. So we don't really know what to do. We weren't really taught what to do with people who are trying to be healthy. We just knew how to triage people who were sick. So you have to think about when you go to the emergency room, they triage you to see who's the sickest person. So in my office, and I didn't realize this until I got out of this, I was really triaging people. I was just going through people until I could find someone who needed surgery or needed some procedure, because that is how you make money. It's a business. I didn't realize that's what I was doing, but you get caught up into it. And so I'm like, I did not get into medicine just to find the people who needed to go to the hospital. I got into medicine to make people healthy or well. And so I had to change what I was doing in order to accomplish that goal, because what I was taught was not working. And I've said this before, and the first person who I saw it not working on was my wife. Is that when she was taking birth control pills and all that stuff, trying to balance her hormones, and I didn't even think of it as balancing. It was just trying to stop the symptoms. Well, it didn't stop the symptoms. It made the symptoms worse. So that's when me and my wife both start to try to figure out, how can we make ourselves better? And this was some 30 years ago. And so this is the culmination of that. Okay, so why doctors say you're normal, the myth inside medicine. Physicians are educated within the same cultural myth of normal that affects all of us. So this is, just doctors. They're just looking at lab numbers to see if they fall into the normal range. They're not looking up to see what the patient looks like. Okay, so that's the disconnect. We look at numbers, we look at x-rays, we look at MRIs, but we very seldom look up to see the patient and see who they are and what are they going through and how is stress at home and at work affecting them. We're only looking at these normal ranges. So we're looking at the average of sick populations. Lab ranges reflect average sick populations, not thriving humans living optimally. Because you got to think, most of the people who are in these studies are getting labs drawn. Most of them are not healthy. Most of them are going to the lab because they think something's wrong with them. And so you're going to get this normal shifted toward the unhealthy people. The people who are healthy, you see people who are healthy, they're not going to the and getting their blood drawn or going to the doctor or whatever. They are just being healthy. So if you don't meet diagnostic criteria, you're labeled normal. But normal only means you're not yet diseased. That's what I was saying. I would go through the office, and hey, if the patient didn't have something that I could fix with birth control pills or surgery or antidepressants, I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know what to tell them to eat. I didn't know how to tell them to test if their gut was working. I didn't know how to tell them to test if their hormones were balanced. I did not learn saliva testing while I was in my residency. I'd learned all of that 7 or 8 years after I'd been in practice and figured out that a lot of the stuff that I learned does not work. All right. So pathology over potential. This keeps doctors focused on pathology instead of potential. So we're only looking at what is diseased. We're not looking at how to make the rest of you healthy. And I don't want to like condemn one particular subspecialty, but this is what I see in oncology is that when you talk about pathology over potential, is that oncologists are so great at trying to kill that cancer, to radiate it, to chemotherapy it, do whatever it needs to kill that cancer. But again, not looking up to see how killing the cancer could also be killing the patient. And what I try to do, I'm not saying you shouldn't do those things, but then you also want to see the potential of them recovering from all of that treatment. And how can I keep them from being from deteriorating while they're doing the treatment? So that's why we try to offer support to cancer patients with vitamin C and with telling them about healthy diets and doing the Signatera test so we can find things early, so we can look up and not look down at some lab numbers or some x-ray or some MRI. Look up and see the patient and see who they are and talk to them. And you will get so much information if you will just pay attention to the patient. And, I love talking to patients. I love hearing their stories. And I love trying to make sense out of a story that they have felt confused about because they keep getting these normal labs. All right. So what does normal labs really mean? Normal labs were built to diagnose a disease. That's what I'm trying to get across to you. Okay. They were trying to see who is diseased enough that we have to intervene in a hospital or we have to intervene with some high-tech, procedure. Okay. Now, in order to be diseased, according to your labs, you had to be 2 standard deviations outside of the mean. And I know that's a lot of words, but I can guarantee you somewhere in your education, you learned about 2 standard deviations from the mean in this standard bell-shaped curve. So feel awful, test to fine. So you can feel terrible and still test fine according to conventional standards. All right. You're not yet sick enough. That's what I told you. We were primarily hospital focused. I spent most of my time in the hospital. I did not spend, this is in my residency, in my training. We do not spend a lot of time in the office talking to patients who are just living day by day, trying to get by. They're not sick enough to go to the hospital. They're not sick enough for some surgery. They're not sick enough for some high price medication. So you just say, hey, you're normal. I'm not quite sure what's going on with you, but according to this, everything seems fine. Well, here's the problem, and I've said this often. The doctor keeps saying you're not sick, and you keep telling the doctor you're not well. And both of you are correct, and that is what causes all of the friction and confusion and frustration. The doctors are frustrated with you because you keep coming in saying something's wrong with you, and they can't find anything. And you're frustrated with them because you keep coming in and you know something is wrong with you, and the doctor can't find anything. When that happens, that makes you a perfect person for me to see, because now I know you don't have a disease, and I'm almost sure you have a functional problem, not a disease. So now they've ruled out all of the serious conditions. So now I can look at, all right, let's do some different testing. Let's look at functional testing, not disease testing, and we can see why you're not functioning like you want to. All right. Okay. So I'm going to spend a little time on this one. Right. So this is what I want to show you. When function declines, but not enough for disease, medicine creates these labels. So this is a bell-shaped curve. So these are people. All right. So what they do is they draw the blood from all of these people. All right. Now, again, would you say that our society is sick or that our society is healthy? So if you say our society is sick, then here where most of the people are, they're still going to be not quite well. Okay. Because you just have to think, let's say 100 years ago, when we weren't eating processed foods, we didn't have all these chemicals in our air and our water, and people weren't dying of heart attacks back then. They may have been dying of infection, but they weren't dying of heart attack. They weren't dying from chronic diseases. All right. So you have to think that before, this curve may have been over here where there were a lot of healthy people. So you have to think this is the healthy part. These are the sick people. These are the super healthy people. So you got to think that before, normal was over here. So if you are outside of the normal range, So if you were outside of the normal range, hey, you were still doing pretty good because everybody was over here more healthy. Now, if you have a sick population, it's going to move over here. So you're going to think that all of these people who have normal labs, that they're healthy, but they're not. They're just normally sick. So, and the only way you can be qualified as a disease is to go way over here. All right. So you have to be in this 2.5% in order to be on the low side of sick. And you have to be at this 2.5% to be on the high side, that your levels are too high. Like hyperthyroidism would be over here. Hypothyroidism would be over here. All right. Now, too high blood sugar will be over here. Too low of a blood sugar will be over here. So that's how that works. Now, let's look at this. And I don't know if we can focus, but let me see if this will, no. I wanted to see if that would get bigger. So this is what I want you to see, is that when things are going right, this should be where people are at their healthiest, okay, where they are functioning well. The majority of people are healthy. They're not, super athletes or anything like the people over here. And they're not, sick. But so this is where health should be. All right. And so if you are over here and you've spent your life over here on this side where you've been either normally healthy or a little bit of a health, fanatic, and these would be like the professional athletes over here. All right. If you've lived your life over here and now through poor eating and being stressed too much and not sleeping well, now you're over here and now your gut doesn't work, all of these. Oh, okay, great. Yeah. So now your gut doesn't work, all of these. So you are now over here. Well, just because you're not over here doesn't mean you don't need some help or that you're not, that you're not well. You are not well. You are not in the place where you normally are. And this is kind of what I wanted to get this in, because I had a sense of clarity today, is that's what the Ageless Blueprint, I think, is about. Because when I went to Egypt and I saw how advanced they were, how they could build these temples and all of this, and I began to realize that, hey, maybe we are not the most technologically advanced. Maybe we are not the most, the healthiest, the greatest civilization that has ever lived. Is that what I believe is that back when things were less artificial or processed like they were, I believe that in ancient societies, people lived over here, okay? That they ate well, they understood, they were connected with their higher power. They were functioning at a much higher level. I think that what has happened over time is that we have lost this ability. We have lost it because of the way we eat, what our environment is, the stress we are. So now we don't have people over here at all. We have lost this at all. And I'm trying to go back and look at what was happening, what kind of things were happening. And the reason why it's an Ageless Blueprint is because they wrote all this down with hieroglyphics. I've been looking at these videos about these ancient writings, these ancient scripts that have been found in monasteries in Peru. And they understood how to maximize human potential. And I think this is what was happening over here. And we're living over here and we call it normal. And so we are not living the lives that we were meant to live. And that's kind of what has happened to me from going from 63 to 64 to 65. I am trying to rediscover my human potential, the potential that they wrote about, the potential that they built. You know, these monasteries are up on these high mountains. She's like, how in the world could they build that up on this high mountain? I don't know. But I believe that in the past, we had the ability to do those things. And we still are trying to figure out what is going on. All right. So that's what Ageless Blueprint is about. How can we understand what we used to have? And there's another book called Pure Human. And that's what he talks about, is that we're losing our natural human potential. And what they also say is most of the technology that we are thinking that is new, it is really recreating what humans could already do. Even just think about Chat GPT. Okay. I think it is doing what humans. Hey, Rebel, I hear music in the background. Do you hear that? Hello, Rebel. Rebel, are you there? Okay, well, I'm going to keep talking. So there's a book called Pure Human that talks about how technology is really just recreating the things that we already could do. Even like knowing all of this information on ChatGPT, what they're talking about is all the information that has ever been available has always been available. So the knowledge that they had back there is still available to us. We just have to reconnect to it. All right. Rebel, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, I was hearing music in the background. Were you hearing that?
Yes, because we lost you for a little bit.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought that was that. Where did you lose me at? I saw you changed the. So where did you lose me? Like a minute or two ago?
Yes.
Okay. So what I was saying is that, hey, I believe that we used to be over here. We used to be what we would call, and this is what Joe Dispenza talked about, as being superhuman. Okay. We were over here where we were functioning at the highest level, mentally, spiritually, physically. You know, we were like pro athletes of the mind, body, and spirit. And that's how these ancient civilizations were able to build things that we can't build now. How they were able to know things that we are just now discovering. Quantum physics, all of this neuroplasticity, all of this information that we're just now discovering, somehow they knew it and they put it into practice. And we have to get over the fact that, hey, if we can't prove it, if we can't do it through 10 scientific studies, then it can't be true. Well, they knew it and they used it appropriately. And that's what we're trying to get back to. All right. So let's go to the next slide. All right. So when function declines, so here's what happens. When you don't qualify for a disease, then they start to give you all of these labels. I did a podcast before about how a lot of things that we call diseases are really just labels. They're not really diseases. And this is one of these: chronic fatigue syndrome. Well, when you're over here and you don't have the energy to do what you used to do over here, that's chronic fatigue. All right. But there's ways to fix that through different types of testing. Polycystic ovary syndrome, that's really unbalanced hormones. And if you don't test it correctly, you call it some syndrome. ADHD, that can be an overstimulation of the nervous system. You can measure that and you can correct that. Metabolic syndrome is saying that you aren't quite sick enough to be diabetic, but we don't want to wait till you become diabetic. We have to do other things. And thankfully, the GLP-1s are kind of trying to head that off. Irritable bowel syndrome. We call it a syndrome because you're not sick enough to have ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, but your gut is not functioning well because maybe you don't have enough good bacteria, maybe you don't have enough fiber or whatever. But that's what we want to know is the function. We just don't want to name things. Now, bipolar disorder, a lot of times that's imbalance in the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, and it can also be an imbalance in hormones. A lot of women who go through menopause are diagnosed as bipolar. No, they really have a hormone imbalance, and you have to test it appropriately in order to figure that out. Fibromyalgia just means that you hurt all over. All right, that's all it means. Fibro means fibrous tissue, myo means muscle, and algia means pain. So fibromyalgia is not a disease. It just says that you hurt all over. You want to know why. And a lot of that is due to cortisol. And if you don't have enough cortisol is an anti-inflammatory. So now everything feels inflamed or sore. And so you can have fibromyalgia from that. And then what they call subclinical hypothyroidism, which just means that you're only looking at TSH and not T3. That's a whole different lecture. But I just want to show you that because there's so many people and it's so hard to get into the disease criteria of this 2.5%, that they just come up with all these syndromes. And this is how the pharmaceutical industry markets themselves. Just look at the commercials. They talk about these different diseases these different drugs for different syndromes. And so the pharmaceutical industry is not really concerned about curing anything. They want to get rid of the symptoms for 24 hours. That's the goal. So if they have these syndromes that no one knows the cure for and no one understands it, you'll keep getting rid of the symptoms for 24 hours. So they love to create these syndromes. And what happens is a lot of times they create a drug and then they create a syndrome to match what they have formulated. So I'm just giving you the behind the scenes information that really shapes medicine. All right. So, hey, I know it's almost time for a break. Any questions so far? Any questions you have, Rebel? I hope it's not too disjointed since we lost each other for a while.
No, everything sounds good. Aside from basically you're saying people need to be in touch with their bodies, right?
Yeah, and don't take no for an answer, and don't take normal labs and just shrug off what's going on with you, because you need to obey your intuition. If something is telling you that something is not right, you need to hang on to that idea until it gets resolved. And again, if you go to the same type of doctor and they keep running the same tests, you are going to get the same answers. So if you're not getting the right answers, you need to look at how can I test differently? And that's what we're going to talk about when we come back. What other tests, other than those routine tests that everybody runs, what other tests are available that might be able to give you an idea of what is going on while you're over on this side of this curve here, and how to get you back over here and not wait till you get down here. All right. So let's go to break.
We are going to a quick break, so stay with us as we explore the Ageless Blueprint right here on W4HC Radio and Talk4 TV. An ancient secret with a modern twist for better health and vitality. Dr. Taylor will be right back. Taking care of your health shouldn't mean taking a handful of pills every day. At Taylor MD Formulations, they create doctor-developed supplements that combine the best natural ingredients so you get the results you need with fewer pills. Taylor MD Formulations is backed by science, designed for real life with real results. Less pills, better health, doctor approved. Shop now at TaylorMDFormulations.com and discover smarter supplements for smarter health. That's TaylorMDFormulations.com. We are back for more of Ageless Blueprint. Once again, let's join Dr. Taylor for more insights and research on the ancient secret to better health and a better life in modern times. Here's your host, Dr. Eldred Taylor.
All right. I hope some of you guys see my introduction, but, I show all of these pictures that I took from Egypt because, it is so amazing what they were able to do. And they were trying to give us this blueprint. So all of those hieroglyphics and all of those things, they were trying to tell you a ageless story. And that's what really opened my eyes up to, is that what is the mission of Ageless Blueprint? It's really to follow those blueprints that have worked through thousands and thousands of years and not be so focused on some new thing that we just discovered. What we are really discovering is a new way to understand this ageless information. So that's what I'm trying to bring to you, is how can we modernize this information that's been around for 5,000-6,000 years, and how can we get our head around it in a way that we can understand? Because I show all those pictures to show all of the things that they could do, all of those temples and all the hieroglyphics. I tell you, the hieroglyphics were all over the place. How could they chisel or however did they make it where it covered the entire walls and ceilings and all of the posts? All of them had these hieroglyphics on. How in the world could they get that done? Well, I think they were on this side of that curve. That's my thought. All right. So the disease model versus the functional model. Disease model waits for disease. It treats symptoms. It focuses on labs and seeks normal. All right. The functional medicine problem detects early imbalance. It restores function, not just the absence of disease. You want to restore function. It studies patterns or rhythms or cycles, and it seeks optimal. And sometimes this word optimal is used to talk about people who are like, pumped up and, Arnold Schwarzenegger type people. But no, optimal just means that everything is functioning like it's supposed to, and your body is running effortlessly. All right. All right. So what blood tests miss? Okay. You can't look in the blood for everything. Okay. There's some information you can find out in the blood, but sometimes you have to look other places. It's almost like, if you lost your keys and you keep going back to the same place over and over again, looking for your keys. Well, you've already looked there and it's not there. So that's how you have to look at blood tests. Okay, I looked at blood tests and the abnormalities aren't there. So maybe I should look at something else. So if I have irritable bowel syndrome, you can't see gut health in the blood. You need a comprehensive stool analysis. You have to look. So here's how I used to explain how I would explain this. If you want to know how the heart is beating, you have to look at the electrical charges that's coming out of the heart. If you want to know how the gut is working, you have to look at what the gut is producing. So you can take what the gut is producing and you can see, hey, there's abnormalities in what the gut is producing. So then that helps you to understand the function. So you can look at stool and see if there's bacteria or parasites or are the enzymes out of balance there. So you look where the function is. All right. Immune reactivity. Now, there's some things you can see about your immune system, like your white blood count and all of that, but you can't assess immune reactivity. You need IgG food sensitivity testing, because inflammation is like a major component of aging. And so what you want to know is you want to make sure that you're not inflamed. And there are some tests like C-reactive protein in the blood that can tell you you're inflamed. But what is causing the inflammation? And this IgG food sensitivity testing is different from the testing that you may have done where they prick your skin. That is looking for immediate sensitivities where I eat something and my face swells and all that. You don't need a lot of sensitive testing for that. But these delayed sensitivities are these sensitivities that are indication of a leaky gut, or it's letting is letting things come through the gut that shouldn't be there. Things like pieces of broccoli or pieces of whey protein or dairy. And then you build antibodies to these. And now these antibodies cause inflammation in your joints or in your thyroid. Almost every autoimmune disease is connected to your gut. So that's why I put those two together. Gut and autoimmune disease usually run together. All right. And then you can't measure your detox capacity. You need metabolic detox panels. Now, there's some things you can see whether or not your liver is diseased, like fatty liver, or your liver enzymes are elevated. But really, to see how well you're able to detoxify yourself, there are actually tests for that. Okay. And you can do things like heavy metal testing, all of these that would decrease your ability to detoxify yourself and could also cause inflammation. And then hormone rhythms. My bread and butter is that you can't look in the blood to look at hormones because they're fat soluble. You cannot look in the water soluble blood. So that is a different test. If you're looking at your hormones and they keep coming back normal and you have fibroids, you have heavy bleeding, you have endometriosis, you have menopause, you have puberty, you have infertility, you are not going to find any abnormalities in the blood. And that's across the board. They're not there. In the saliva, that's where you have to look. So again, don't keep going to the same place looking for your keys. And when your keys aren't there, you have to rethink. You have to say, where else could I have left my keys? So that's what you have to do with this testing. You're like, okay, there's something wrong with this person and I can't find it in the blood. Let me talk to them a little bit more. Let me try and figure out what might be dysfunctioning and let me test that function. And there's all types of functional medicine tests. These are just the beginning. So, and you can spend a lot of money on this functional medicine testing. And a lot of places make you do all of this testing. But my thought is try and talk to the patient long enough to try and figure out what tests need to be done. Only do those tests. All right. And fix the major problem first. And a lot of times when you fix the major problem, the other problems just fall away. Let's go to the next one. Now, I told you, hormones is my bread and butter. I talk about that ad nauseum. But men and women feel differently when their hormones are out of balance. Women, what primarily happens is their progesterone drops because they stop ovulating. They stop making an egg. And then the first things that I usually see, a patient comes in, they say they can't sleep well. They have difficulty turning their brains off because they have anxiety. They keep, rehashing the day. And also they get weight gain because progesterone helps you to burn fat for energy, where estrogen makes you store fat. And then let's look at men. Now, men are often diagnosed with low testosterone because they look at the low levels in their blood. And the blood, and I can talk about this in men because it doesn't change due to menopause. In the blood, that's the testosterone you see there is the testosterone that's coming from the testicles. And a lot of times, especially in younger men and even in older men, the primary problem is not the low testosterone. The primary problem is usually the chronic stress, because I see a lot of men who come in and they say, hey, I'm on testosterone. And when I first started it, I felt great. I felt all of this. And then after a while, it kind of faded away. Well, let me tell you why. When men are under chronic stress, and they've seen this even with soldiers on the battlefield, is that when they're under chronic stress, their testosterone goes down. Because you have to think the body is always trying to conserve energy. And if you're under chronic stress and you are trying to conserve energy, if you're a man, your body is saying, I don't need you to waste a lot of energy on having sex or chasing after women. We're in survival mode here. So just, cool your horses, calm the flame a little bit. You can't waste energy. We are in survival mode. You need that to run or to fight. So a lot of times if we fix the chronic stress, the low testosterone goes away. Now, I also want to say is that if you give testosterone and it's not coming from the ovaries, you're not going to see it in the blood, but you can see it in the saliva. So you need to monitor these patients, or you need to make sure you're being monitored through saliva if you are taking testosterone, whether you're a man or a woman. Now, and these problems in both sexes cause mood swings, motivation loss, especially low testosterone in men will cause them to lose motivation, and chronic stress because they're fatigued. I just talked to a guy who was a big time executive, and he's 67 now, and he's retired, and he's fatigued. And he's like, man, I got to retirement and I'm too tired to enjoy it. Well, being an executive, he had a lot of chronic stress. His sex drive is down, his testosterone's down. But I told him, because we did his cortisol curve, his main problem is his cortisol. So we're going to fix that. And then the testosterone problem will probably go away. So functional medicine is all about finding that root cause, going back to the beginning. And that's what Ageless Blueprint is about. What is the root blueprint? What is the original blueprint? Let's try and follow that and not try and come up with all of this new fancy, things that we just discovered. So the Ageless Blueprint philosophy, you balance is over levels. We want to balance estrogen, progesterone. We want to balance the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. It's not about looking at raw numbers. True health comes from harmonious balance, not just hitting numbers. So we just don't want to get to a disease number for sure, where now we're a hospital patient. So function is greater than diagnosis. We care how your body works, not just what disease you might have. And that's key. I'm telling you, that's how I was raised. Do you or do you not have a disease? Do you or do you not need to go in the hospital, in the emergency room, and in OB? We were taught, hey, look, are you or are you not going to deliver? Are you or are you not going into labor? Then we want you to go home. Okay. In the emergency room, have you been shot? Okay. Have you not? Who's been shot? Who hasn't been shot? Okay. You go over there. You go there. So that's what we were taught. We were just taught this separation. It wasn't that this continuum that, hey, how did they get to the emergency room? It was something that was been going on for a long time. Let's get to that issue. Now, you can't do that in the emergency room, but that's what doctors in their office should be doing. So awareness over avoidance. Understanding your body empowers better choices than fear-based medicine. And that's what we're talking about. Be aware of what is going on with you. And if something feels out of balance, if something feels not right, keep pursuing it until you get an answer that feels right to you. You will know what feels right to you. I hear this all the time, especially on patients who decide to do or not do chemotherapy and radiation for cancer, is that a lot of them will say, it didn't feel right what the doctor was telling me. It didn't feel right that they said, hey, what you eat doesn't have any impact on this treatment, that vitamin C might hurt you, that doing whatever you are doing, trying to help yourself, change your diet. It didn't feel right when the doctor told me that wasn't important. Yes, listen to your intuition, okay? Because if the doctors are like me, and I don't think medical education has changed very much, they were brought up just like I was. They were taught just like I was, because in medicine it's see one, do one, teach one. So whatever you saw, you did, and that's what you taught. And that's why medicine changes at less than a snail's pace, because of that see one, do one, teach one philosophy. It's very hard to break that pattern. So here's the key insight. In a sick culture, normal isn't the goal. Vitality is. So, I tell you, I'm 65, and I see patients who are younger than me, and I'm like, wow, that's not how it's supposed to be. I see people at the grocery, I know they're either my age or younger, and I see that they have lost their vitality. And I feel like the people in the grocery store, they think it's normal to have one of these little riding things to go around the grocery store. They think it's because they have all of these chairs out there that are motorized. So they're like, okay, that must be normal. When we get to this point, we can't. And so that's what we have to reframe our mind. We have to get rid of that myth of normal. Just because this is a great one I like to use. Okay. Constipation. What's the definition of constipation? Okay. So we all think constipation is not having a bowel movement. All right. That's when it's hard. Now, true constipation is if you have less than 2 bowel movements a day. Now, most people like, what in the heck are you talking about? If I have 2 bowel movements a week, I think I'm doing good. Yes, that has become normal because we eat so much processed food. We have such a low fiber diet. People in cultures who eat from the ground or eat from the earth and have a lot of fiber, they will have 2, 3, 4 large bowel movements a day. All right. I used to have these statistics where how many grams of poop, and how different we are than other people because they eat high fiber. They eat, they don't eat processed foods. So even our definition of constipation is that medical constipation is having less than 1 bowel movement a day. But that's just normal, but that's not optimal. That's not showing that your gut is functioning properly. What really should happen is that you shouldn't have food in your body for more than 24 hours. And you should have this reflex called the gastrocolic reflex. So that if you eat breakfast today, breakfast from yesterday should be coming out the other end. Lunch today, lunch should be coming out the other end from yesterday. So that's what I'm talking about. We have been brainwashed into this myth of normal and allowing sickness to be normal. And I'm trying to change that and get you to be aware of that. So in the Ageless Blueprint, in the school, we talk about all of this, you guys. That's why I'm trying to get you to come to that so you can be aware, so you can discover what your blood work is missing. We do saliva hormone testing to track your true hormone rhythms throughout the day so we can see your cortisol curve. And we pulled it together to see how much estrogen and progesterone and are they in balance. We can do gut and immune testing, understand what's really happening in your digestive system. There's stool tests you can do. We can actually send that out to you and we can go over the results. There's food sensitivity testing that you can look and see. Is my gut leaking and causing me autoimmune problems? And then functional detoxifier. And this is just a few of the things we do. I have all these gadgets that we can recommend to look at this is a Hume band. It looks at your longevity statistics. It can tell you what your biological age is. I'm going to do in my school group, we're going to have an upper level lesson where we talk about all these biohacking devices, which allows you to make changes and see the results almost instantaneously. So you know what's working for you and you know what's not. So I have a lot of things that we have planned in our Ageless Blueprint School. I would encourage you to join it now. You can join the community for free. I give an ageless tip of the day, and usually I'll post something 2 or 3 times a week just to let you in on some of the things that I'm learning. We also have a tier where it has these courses you can take. One is called Hormone Clarity. The other one is called the 5 Pillars of Ageless Living. The other one is called Mindset Mastery. You get all of those courses. It's $10 a month, and we can do a question and answer like once a month. But I also answer questions in that group. Then we're going to have a higher level group where we're going to have hormone health coaches, and we're also going to have kind of a VIP level where we really work together and try and get you functioning and get you to where that Ageless Blueprint, where we're functioning on that higher level on a consistent basis. That's what we really want to try and get back to. So I know we only have a few minutes left. I don't know, Rebel, if you have some questions or did we have any questions, but I hope I'm getting it across that the information on how to live better, it's out there. It's always been there. We just have to remember it. We have to reclaim it. And I think we can live on the other side of that bell-shaped curve, and we don't have to slowly deteriorate into a disease state. All right. So any final words, Rebel?
Well, you had a question about when you eat something, you mentioned you eat breakfast and then breakfast from yesterday comes out.
Yeah.
That's not the way it's supposed to happen, right? You eat breakfast and a few hours later it comes out. How is it supposed to work?
No, here's what I'm saying. So the transit time from what you eat to having a bowel movement should be around 24 hours. So it's called like the transit time. because the longer waste stays in your body, the more you reabsorb those toxins. So that's why I'm saying constipation is so bad. So if you've got these toxins, that it's just like leaving your trash in the house. Eventually it begins to stink. It begins to attract bugs that you don't want. So that's what we're talking about. You don't want waste products to be sitting in your gut, for 2, 3, 4 days. So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying breakfast from yesterday, I'm not saying you have diarrhea from yesterday. I'm just saying that your body has absorbed all the nutrients, and now the waste from yesterday's breakfast should be coming out. Okay. And then the waste from yesterday's lunch should be coming out somewhere around lunchtime. And sometimes people have bowel, 1 or 2 or 3 bowel movements at the beginning of the day. But all I'm saying is that waste needs to keep moving. It doesn't need to stay in your gut. All right. So I hope I cleared that up.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. All right. All right. So I know we're over time. So we'll see you next week, everybody.
Thanks for joining Dr. Taylor today. If you missed any part of this show, just check out the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Ageless Blueprint is every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on W4HC Radio at W4HC.com. Together, we discover the ancient secrets to better health through science and spirituality made for modern times. Until then, feel free to check out agelessblueprintpodcast.com and TaylorMDFormulations.com for more information.